Welcome everyone to A Taste of Shabbat. I'm Doug Millstone, the president of Beth Tikva Synagogue. Ayasha Koach to everyone who helped this morning. Rabbis Grover, Sachs, Chazan Kovari, Reuben on the piano, and of course Ricky, who does all of our IT work. I want to remind everyone about our town hall meeting on May 27th. Please be sure to register. Shabbat Shalom, and please stay safe.
חיים שיש בהם יראת שמיים, יראת שמיים ויראת חטא, חיים שאין בהם בושה וכלימה, חיים של אושר וכבוד, חיים שתהיבנו בתורה ויראת שמיים, חיים שימלא משאלות ליבנו לטובה מנסלה. ודור נגיד גודלך ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, לדור לדור ודור נגיד גודלך ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושפחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש, מפינו לא יבוש לעולם ועד, לדור לדור ודור נגיד גודלך ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, לדור לדור ודור נגיד גודלך ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. נא-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-נה-
One of the things that has been on my mind lately is how in just a single instant, our priorities changed around the world. We have new concerns that just a couple of months ago were not on any of our minds. As a shul, we are worried about the impact this pandemic will have on our financial stability. We are concerned about the safety of our members, guests, and staff when we eventually are allowed to reopen the building. We are worried about ensuring the synagogue and your clergy can continue to be a source of support and comfort in these difficult times. When we cannot be physically close, we are concerned about how to remain spiritually and emotionally connected. As individuals, our priorities were also overturned. We are scared for the health and well-being of our loved ones. We are worried about the impact this virus will have on our financial stability. We are concerned for the long-term impact isolation will have on ourselves and our family. The educational impact this virus will have on our children and grandchildren. As we move into the third month of distancing, we are worried about our sanity. As we cannot do the things we wish we could, and we cannot see the people we care most about. What worries us today was not even a thought when this year began a few months ago. And at the same time, our prior concerns, they've been pushed out of our minds. And for the most part, they've been relegated to some space, which we simply don't have the time for in our current day-to-day survival. We don't have the brain power for. I've been worried about this and thinking about how we can balance our concerns from yesterday with the problems we're facing today. In particular, if I had been asked in January what the most significant threat was to Jewish life, I would have said anti-Semitism. And yet today my answer might be different. Because today I'm also concerned for our institutions that have had to shut their doors, synagogues, schools, summer camps, community centers. Judaism is a religion of gathering, and COVID-19 has changed that in an instant. It's become an existential threat. Yet sadly this week our community had a stark reminder that though we may face new problems and new threats, our old ones have never gone away. On Monday morning, our virtual minyan, as well as Rabbi Grover's Torah class, were Zoom-bombed. For those unfamiliar with this term, let me tell you what happened. In almost a single instant, over 100 people joined the meetings. They used derogatory and offensive language. They displayed vulgar images on the screen to participants. And they sent hate-filled anti-Semitic messages in the chats. I was not personally subjected to either experience. And to those who were present, I'm so sorry for what you experienced. I can only begin to imagine how disturbing it was to come together to pray, to learn, and to have that shoved in your face. Yet I can imagine how it might have felt. Because the very thought of this disgusts me. It angers me in ways I cannot fairly express in words. After all, I might not have been there, but those in the room were my congregants and colleagues, my friends and my community. This was an attack on us all. It was also a wake-up call. Our priorities have indeed shifted in light of the pandemic. And yet we cannot allow ourselves for even one moment to forget about the most insidious, the most continuous threat to Jewish existence: hate. This week we begin reading the book of Bemidbar, as it is called in Hebrew, or the book of Numbers as it is known in English. It gets its English name because the book offers lots and lots of numbers and censuses and other information about the Israelites and their journey from Egypt. I want to use this moment to share a few numbers with you that are relevant to my topic today. The ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, has just released its report on anti-Semitism in the United States this past year. 2019 saw more acts of anti-Semitism than any year in the last 4 decades. Over 1,000 acts of harassment, 919 incidents of vandalism, and far too many physical attacks on Jews. Remember, in just 2019, we saw deadly attacks in a California synagogue, a Jewish grocery store in New Jersey, and a rabbi's home in New York. It's no better in Canada. B'nai B'rith Canada's report for 2019, also recently released, does not portray more optimism. Anti-Semitic attacks rose by 8% from the previous year. An average of 6 such attacks a day occur here in Canada. Incidents of anti-Semitism. Ontario saw more than a 50% increase in in-person anti-Semitic harassment from the year before. I share these numbers with you, not to scare you, but because I want us to remember we have new problems, but we can never forget our oldest and most vicious threat. This week was a wake-up call. We have changed and implemented new policies in our virtual programs to prevent future incidents. Yet as long as hate is allowed to exist, we'll never be 100% safe. All of us should be asking, what can we take away from the incident Monday morning? What can we learn? The first lesson is one of vigilance. Nobody is at fault. Nobody but the criminal is ever responsible for the crime they commit. And yet there were steps we could have taken, steps which would have made the experience more difficult for our attackers. We cannot let ourselves be distracted by other problems. Until anti-Semitism is eradicated, we must always be prepared. Turning to our Parsha, the second half of this lesson is made clear. The responsibility is upon us all. The Midrash teaches that Moses counted the Israelites like a shepherd. He counted his flock. Each sheep was precious. And it wasn't enough to guide a majority on their journey. It was his job to keep track and ensure the safety of every single member of the community. Today, we don't have prophets like Moshe. We have rabbis, we have cantors, executive directors, and board presidents. But we don't have prophets. And what we do have does not compare. There is no single person like Moses who can look out for every single Israelite. Instead, it is incumbent upon each of us to take up what we can in that role. If you see a door open, whether physically or virtually, it's incumbent upon each of us to take notice, virtually or in person. Our safety is in all of our hands. We should alert a staff member. We should never open a door for someone we don't know. We should never send virtual coordinates or passwords to someone we don't know either. We must balance this with remaining a place that is welcoming and respectful. Yet we must maintain our security. If we see someone unfamiliar, reach out to them or point them out to a staff member if you don't feel comfortable. We want to welcome them into our community. Likely it's a new face looking to join what's an incredible shul. Yet we must always remain vigilant and never complacent. The second lesson is also about numbers. There are not a lot of Jews in the world. It is a fact. Despite what anti-Semites might claim, our political influence is far smaller than they imagine. We must combine our numbers with each other and with others to make an impact. Hate is connected. Anti-Semitism might be the oldest form of it, but it is all connected. We must stand with other minority groups like ourselves. We must stand up against hatred in all its forms. There were no black people on our Zoom call, and yet the N-word was repeated along with anti-Semitic slurs, because hatred breeds hatred. We cannot allow it to gain a hold in any form, because at the end of the day, if we stand by, no matter who it began against, it will eventually turn to us as well. Former Canadian Minister of Justice and Attorney General Irwin Cotler, he made this point so clear when he spoke to our shul. Caring about human rights means caring about them in all situations, whether or not the Jewish community is directly attacked. We are a small population, and in a democratic society, we are just a tiny constituency. What gives us influence and strength is building relationships with other minority groups. When we stand together, when we speak out when our values are threatened, not just our own community, we'll find we have a lot more power and influence. Like the individual Israelites, not one of them could have survived their journey unless they stuck together. Individually, none of them would have been able to withstand the trials they would face. We as a people are strongest only when we are united with each other. And not only that, but when we are united with brothers and sisters of all faiths and races. We are strongest when we stand together against hatred in all its forms. What happened Monday morning was awful, but it was also a wake-up call. And thank God it was not worse than it was. May the wickedness that was brought in our community be turned into fuel for good. May this day be a catalyst which wakes us from our complacency. This Shabbat, we ask God that one day peace will truly reign, that hatred will be removed from the hearts of humanity. But until that day, we must be vigilant. We must stand up not only for ourselves, but for all who are oppressed wherever they are. Nobody should ever be alone, because we, the Jewish people, will stand with them. And until the day comes when hatred is removed, may God bless us with the love to stand together with each other and the strength to always stand up for what is right. Shabbat Shalom.
Elohei Avotenu Parcheinu Va'bedacha המשולשת בתורה כתובה על ידי משה עבדך אמורה מפי אדוניו עיניו קדושך כאמור יברכך כן יהי רצון. וישם לך שלום. כן יהי רצון. וביום וביום השבת שני כבשים בני שנה תמימי וביום וביום השבת שני כבשים בני שנה תמימי ושני סונים סולת מנחה בלולם בשמן ונסקו בלולם בשמן ונסקו עולת שבת בשבתו בשבתו הלולת התמיד ונסקה הלולת התמיד ונסקה עולת שבת בשבתו בשבתו הלולת התמיד ונסקה הלולת התמיד ונסקה